Nintendo is known for having consistency. Whether you're playing Super Mario World or Super Mario Bros. U, you'll feel really familiar, despite being released 22 years apart. I think this is part of the reason why Nintendo games retain their popularity. If you grew up with Super Mario Kart, you could totally pick up Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and still have the same feeling. And it's because of this consistency that The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is by far the weirdest first-party Nintendo game. Except for maybe Yoshi's Topsy-Turvy, but I don't remotely know what the hell that's supposed to be. You all know Majora's deal. The moon is crashing into Termina, you have 3 days, yada yada yada. But if you've played the game, you'll know that's just the surface level of why the game is weird. There's a mask system which gives you a bunch of different abilities, and also there's a real focus on NPCs. They all have personalities and schedules throughout the 3 days, which is absolutely crazy for an N64 game. And Termina itself is just an acid trip. But the weirdest thing of all is, despite how weird the game is, we all love it. On all the polls of the best Zelda games, you can usually see it in the top 3, though Breath of the Wild may push it back a bit. Just appreciate the fact that this game came out only a year and a half after Ocarina of Time, the greatest game of all time according to everyone on the internet, and it still holds its own. That's insane. That'd be like if Nintendo announced an entire sequel to Breath of the Wild coming out next summer. But why do we love it so much? I love Majora's Mask as much as the next person, but I can't explain why I like it. Except for the Zora controls. I could literally play a game with just Zora controls. These controls are so good. Here's a fun exercise. What makes different games different? Between Kirby Triple Deluxe and Kirby Planet Robobot, you could say robots. Between Smash 64 and Smash Melee, you could literally say everything from the game engine's unique stages to the awesome characters. And between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, good luck! Literally, try to compare these games without saying the following words. Creepy. Atmospheric. Moody. Super tight Zora controls. Majora's Mask has this XFactor to it that's really hard to identify. It's like Star Wars. Try asking someone why Star Wars is good. The best thing you'll probably get is, the characters are good, or giant freaking spaceships. Which isn't wrong, but it's far from able to capture what Star Wars is. I'm going to make a case for what the X-Factor is. But first, we need to set the stage for Majora's Mask. What kind of person creates a game like this? Enter Eiji Aonuma. Now, right away, if you're a massive nerd like me, you're thinking, that's the guy who makes all the Zelda things. You're wrong. That's what I thought too, until I started researching for this video. Shigeru Miyamoto is actually the creator of the series. He created Zelda 1, made the misstep of largely ignored Zelda 2, and returned to form with a legendary Link to the Past, up until Ocarina of Time, which is where things get weird. Most games have 1, maybe 2 directors, and Ocarina had 5. Miyamoto supervised over all of them. Aonuma was one of those directors. He made all the dungeons, which is no small task. Except for the water temple! Get it? Because everyone hates the water temple? I think it's a rule of the universe you can't make an Ocarina video without bringing it up. After Ocarina was released and was insanely critically and financially successful, it has literally sold more than Breath of the Wild in the first month. Nintendo had an important question to ask itself. How the hell do we follow that up? If your answer is, slightly modify the game and release it as a new game, that's exactly what Nintendo tried to do. The original idea was Zelda, which roughly translates to another Zelda, which besides sounding super jaded, we have to make another Zelda, was basically going to be a remix of existing game with redesigned dungeons. Which leads us back to the 5 directors. Guess who has his work cut out for him? Yup, Eiji Aonuma. Aonuma was super unthrilled about the idea of just redesigning dungeons. He just perfected. So he made a deal with Miyamoto. Instead of redesigning dungeons, he'd get to be the director for his own new Zelda game, under the deal that had to be made in less than a year. Which, if you think about it, is insane. Aonuma actually still needed an idea for the game though, so he talked with another one of Ocarina's directors, Yoshiaki Koizumi. When I started the script in December, Koizumi was kind of unknown, but now he's the main dude behind the Nintendo Switch. So whenever you see a Nintendo Switch, you can think of a giant moon crashing into the Earth, because Koizumi totally came up with the idea for that. Koizumi wanted to make a cops and robbers game that featured a week looping over and over again, which definitely inspired the 3-day system, so Aonuma and Koizumi teamed up to make Majora's Mask. So, why is Majora's Mask different? From the very outset of the project, Aonuma wanted not to be a rerun of Ocarina, which is why he requested to make something completely different. He correctly believed that Ocarina was the best version of itself, so in order to make something just as excellent, the new game would have to be completely different. There's a great Aonuma quote which I think tells us everything we didn't know. Our goal, rather, was to create something familiar that has been warped in a very unusual and interesting way. Some might say that it's hard to create a follow-up to the greatest game of all time, let alone a year afterwards, but Aonuma saw this as a great benefit to his project. People had Ocarina ingrained in their heads, so you can make Majora an interesting experience by twisting the familiar into the unknown. So, now we come back to the XFactor, the difference between Ocarina and Majora. Majora is trying to be something new by warping the old. For example, the characters in Ocarina are basically reasons to do things. For example, the Cuckoo Lady in Kokiri Village. Sorry, Kakariko Village. Kokiri is the forest, Kakariko is the village. Oh my god, why are these names basically identical? For example, Cuckoo Lady in Kakariko Village wants you to find her 7 chickens which have fled across the map. In return, you get a bottle. She then hilariously explains that she's actually allergic to chickens, which kind of underlines how arbitrary the mission was in the first place. So, on the note of something familiar that has been warped in a very unusual and interesting way, let's look at the same character model in Majora's Mask, who has been given a completely different storyline. Majora does this with many characters. Even a pair of bosses in Ocarina become regular NPCs. In Majora, Cuckoo Lady has a really tragic story of reuniting with her fiancé and getting married minutes before the moon crashes into Termina. I think this is Majora's strong point. While Ocarina cared about getting you to the next area, Majora puts characters at the center. And all of these characters are represented through masks. When you help the characters in Majora, you get their masks. Each one has a different ability which helps you progress. You are literally using the strengths of all the characters that you've encountered throughout the game to help you move forward. Therefore, the characters in Majora are something familiar that has been warped in a very unusual and interesting way. The other warped thing is the overall structure of the game. At the time of release, Majora's Mask had the least amount of dungeons of any other Zelda titles. Well, technically Zelda 2 had palaces instead of dungeons, but we're not talking about Zelda 2. Anyways, lack of dungeons can be explained by the focus of Majora. Breadth instead of depth. Here's a great Miyamoto quote. I wanted to make a compact entry in the Zelda series that could be replayed over and over, revealing greater depth with each playthrough. It's useless to make something that the audience just skims over in one viewing, like a movie. The full flavor of a creation gradually emerges with each viewing, as all the subtleties reveal themselves. That's what we were aiming for. It's something I've always strived towards. According to IGN, there are a staggering 68 side quests throughout all of Majora's Mask. In comparison, Breath of the Wild has 76, which is shockingly close. So, our question was, what makes Majora's Mask so weird? Historically, we know that the original Ocarina sequel is going to be 80% the same, but Aonuma thought this was a bad idea, so he decided to go as far to the other side as possible. Aonuma's genius was that in order to make it feel different, he used the exact same characters in completely different ways to create a really eerie feeling. The traditional structure of Zelda games was also skewed, a focus on the side quests instead of the main story. Majora is weird because it concurrently balances familiarity and the bizarre. In order to be truly different, you need to still hold on to what's the same.